10 inventors killed by their own invention. The level at which the world has reached today is the result of continuous contributions and inventions made by many intellectual inventors. Right from the spark of an amazing idea to conceptually designing it, the efforts of the inventors are countless, and as a result, continuously push the boundaries of what's possible. But not all inventions lead to glory. Some fail, while others tragically end in death. That is why today we are going to learn about 10 inventors, in no particular order, that were killed by the very contraptions they created. Welcome to Insanity Collection. Please consider subscribing to the channel for more dark and mysterious content. With that being said, let's get right into the 10 inventors killed by their own inventions. Number 10. Franz Reichelt, Wingsuit. On February 4th, 1912, Austrian-born French tailor Franz Reichelt climbed to the top of the Eiffel Tower in a wingsuit of his own design. The tailor had told French authorities he planned to test the suit using dummies, but upon his arrival at the tower, he announced that he would take the jump himself. His friends tried to dissuade him, citing wind speed and other factors, including previously unsuccessful attempts with dummies, but Reichelt was not moved. He would not use a safety rope or any other precautions. "I want to try the experiment myself, and without trickery, as I intend to prove the worth of my invention," he told journalists. Newspapers described the suit as only a little more voluminous than ordinary clothing, that when extended resembled a sort of cloak fitted with a vast hood of silk. To release the parachute, which had a surface area of 320 square feet and a height of 16 feet, Reichelt merely had to extend his arm out so his body was in a cross position. By 8:22 a.m., Reichelt was at the top of the Eiffel Tower. He adjusted the suit and, facing the Seine, tested the wind direction by tossing a scrap of paper off the edge. Then, he placed one foot on the guardrail and, observed by 30 journalists, 2 cinematographers, one up top and one on the ground, and crowds gathered below, he took one deep breath and jumped. The parachute folded around Reichelt almost immediately. He plummeted for a few seconds before hitting the ground 187 feet below, leaving a crater 5.9 inches deep. His injuries were gruesome. In its April 1912 issue, Popular Mechanics reported that his body was a shapeless mass when the police picked it up, and the tailor was dead by the time onlookers reached him. An autopsy later determined he died of a heart attack during his fall. Number 9. Francis Edgar Stanley, the Stanley steamer. Francis E. Stanley invented the steam engine-based car and manufactured it with his twin brother, Freeland O. Stanley, in 1897. His designs were influenced by George Eli Whitney's steam engine. In 1898, the Stanleys were invited to Boston's first automobile show, where cars were tested for speed and hill climbing abilities. With a speed of 27 miles per hour, the Stanley steamer set a top speed record and was the only car to make it to the top of the test hill. They established Stanley Motor Carriage Company. In 1906, they broke the world record for the fastest mile with a speed of 127 miles per hour, or 205 kilometers per hour, in just 28.2 seconds. Later, on July 31st, 1918, Francis crashed into a woodpile while driving a Stanley steamer and trying to maintain a distance from a farm wagon traveling alongside his car. By 1924, the company had to shut down due to the popularity of gas and electric engines. Earlier, he was into portrait painting. As cameras were limelighted, FE grew into the Stanley Dry Plate Company. However, the brothers abandoned photography when they became interested in automobile development and sold the dry plate business to George Eastman of Eastman Kodak for $500,000. Number 8. Henry Smilinski, the Flying Car. Henry Smilinski was a Northrop-trained engineer, as he wanted to start a company which focused on bringing a flying car to the market. He left his job. This engineer, along with his partner Hal Blake, created a unique design by coupling a car and a plane. He took the wings of a Cessna 337 aircraft and joined it to the Ford Pinto. The car is known as Ave Mizar. In 1971, through his company, Advanced Vehicle Engineers, a prototype of the flying car was built. Adaptive controls make the car drive as either a car on the ground or a plane in the air. In early 1973, the company hit a unique combination of imagination, determination, and pomposity, making the Mizar a new automotive sensation. Though they were engine failures during the first test drive, they managed to drive it. In late 1973, Smilinski and Blake discovered there was a problem with plane wings. As the pair were going on a routine test drive of Mizar down the driveway, the Cessna wings detached from the car. The two inventors were in the mid-air, in a Pinto. His Pinto craft struck the top of a tree and crashed into a pickup truck before bursting into flames. A witness watched. After this ghastly incident, the idea was discarded. The idea of Pinto is both terrible and wonderful. Retrospection leaves us in a moment of silence, not just for the two men, but for the odd idea that died with them. Number 7. Marie Curie, Radium. Popularly known as Madame Curie, this Polish-born physicist and chemist was one of the most famous scientists of her time. She was the first of the 4 scientists who were awarded the Nobel Prize twice. Along with her husband, Pierre, she was awarded the Nobel Prize in 1903 for radioactivity and in 1911 for chemistry. According to the BBC, the Curie couple worked in investigating radioactivity, building on the work of the German physicist Röntgen and the French physicist Becquerel. In July 1898, they discovered a new chemical element called polonium. By the end of the year, they discovered the most popular element, radium. After Pierre's death due to a road accident in 1906, Marie took over his teaching post, which made her the first woman to teach at the Sorbonne, Paris. Her research acted as an essential element in the development of X-rays in surgery, as her extensive work involved an association with the highly powerful radioactive materials. Her health started deteriorating by the late 1920s. She was affected with leukemia and died on July 4th, 1934. Number 6. Otto Liillianthal, the glider. Opfer müssen gebracht werden, meaning sacrifices must be made. These were the final words of Otto Liillianthal, referred to as the Glider King. He pioneered human aviation. The German-based engineer was considered the first man to launch himself into the air, fly, and land safely through his gliders. He was also one of the inspirations for the Wright brothers, who later designed the airplane. Though he had unsuccessful attempts in his childhood, he was committed to the idea of human flight. After experimenting with ornithopters, in 1889, he published a book, Bird Flight as the Basis of Aviation, which described the flight of birds, their type and structure, his theories, and the application of gathered data, which became one of the classics of aviation. His first glider was all set to fly in 1891. Before his death in 1896, he had built 18 models, of which 15 were monoplanes, and the rest were biplanes. He had also taken more than 2,000 glider flights. Many countries' newspapers and magazines published photographs of Liillianthal gliding, positively impressing the public. Thereby, the scientific opinion on flying machines gradually started arousing in the era where flying is considered unscientific. However, Liillianthal's gliders had one major fault. Other than the required continuous motions of the pilot, they had no means of control to the flight. The pilot needs to bend and exercise considerable strength to affect the direction and stability of the glider. By shifting his weight, he was able to balance the craft. While flying on the 9th of August, 1896, Liillianthal fell 17 meters, breaking his spine. Sadly, he died the next day. Although he was dead and had flaws in the design, Liillianthal forever influenced the aviation industry. Number 5. Jean-Francois Pelantra de Rossier, hot air balloon. Europe-based Jean-Francois Pelantra de Rossier was the first man to ascend in a hot air balloon, along with the Marquis d'Arlande. Though studying pharmacy in Paris, he was drawn toward chemistry and experimental physics. He's the man behind a breathing apparatus similar to scuba gear, which helps workers working in a hazardous environment. He was well known for using extremely theatrical and even more dangerous methods of practically displaying his lectures to grab public attention. It is this habit of being the center of attention that got him into tragedy. He volunteered to ascend the balloon with Marquis. Pelantra de Rossier was envious of the stardom Jean-Pierre Blanchard, the first man to cross the English Channel, along with Dr. John Sheldon, on the 26th of July, 1784. Pelantra de Rossier designed a new type of double balloon with a hot air balloon underneath a hydrogen balloon. On the 15th of June, 1785, Pelantra de Rossier died as he fell to the earth. Although the reasons are unknown, it is expected that a spark from the heat source might have ignited the hydrogen, causing a fire. Number 4. Alexander Bogdanov, blood transfusion. Alexander Bogdanov enthusiastically attempted to change the world. A risk-taker by profession, he professed many of the traits of a genius, but many proved fatal. He was into multiple disciplines: medicine, economics, politics, philosophy, and writing. It's estimated that he published close to 200 volumes of work, including the science fiction novel Red Star and its sequel, Engineer Many. Sadly, he also believed in some of his fictions, leading to his death. During 1912, he introduced a methodology called techtology, which was a study of science itself. But under Stalin's regime, it was largely ignored. he began experimenting with blood transfusions in the 1920s to achieve eternal youth. He even persuaded Stalin to create the Institute of Blood Transfusion. Following 11 blood transfusions, Bogdanov said he had an improved eyesight and suspended balding. But unfortunately, at the age of 54, he exchanged a liter of blood with a physics student with traces of tuberculosis and malaria. After the transfusion, his body began failing fast, and on April 7th, 1928, Bogdanov's heart failed, and he unfortunately passed away. Number 3. Thomas Andrews, the Titanic. Thomas Andrews was an Irish businessman and shipbuilder. As the head of the drafting department, one of the first jobs that Thomas Andrews was to work on was 3 massive ship liners. The Titanic was among them. Taking every step toward attention to detail while designing, Thomas Andrews first suggested that the new superliners have at least 46 lifeboats, watertight bulkheads, and a double-body frame to protect the ship from collisions. Though his suggestions were the best, most of them were ignored by upper management. Andrews and a group of Harland and Wolff workers, also known as the Guarantee Group, were on board the biggest ship in the world, Titanic, set on her maiden voyage. The Guarantee Group was responsible for the safe working of the Titanic through consistent administration and recommending the required specifications. On the 14th of April, 1912, at 11:40 p.m., when the Titanic struck the iceberg, Andrews observed the slight vibration. After a series of discussions, followed by inspection, he conveyed to Captain Smith that Titanic only had an hour to an hour and a half to live before it submerged into the ocean floor. Being aware of the number of lifeboats and the people they could fit, he did his best to evacuate as many as possible. Some survivors testified seeing Andrews on the boat deck, finding life jackets, encouraging people to get into the lifeboats, and guiding the officers. The body of Thomas Andrews was never recovered. For his efforts, Thomas Andrews was considered a hero who sacrificed his life for others. Number 2. Max Valier, Rocket Car. Austrian-based Max Valier was a rocketary pioneer who helped found the German Spaceflight Society on July 5, 1927, which was the world's largest beginner-level rocketry society. He devoted his life to the research of rocket science. Max Valier continued to spread the spaceflight popularity within Germany throughout his life. Determined to advance rocketry on the Earth as well as in space, Valier set up a systematic approach with 4 stages of development. The first stage would be static engine experiments, which would be used in ground-based rocket-powered vehicles in the second stage, followed by production of rocket-assisted aircraft for the third stage, and finally, the development of a complete rocket-propelled spaceship. After considerable and successful first-stage engine tests, on March 15, 1928, Valier moved on to the second stage, in which he built the world's first rocket car with a speed of 145 miles per hour, along with Fritz von Opel and F.W. Sanders. This was later developed into a rocket sled by 1929, with the speed of 250 miles per hour. This encouraged Valier to begin the third stage of his research by experimenting with liquid propellant rockets for aircraft. On May 17, 1930, while testing, one of his liquid oxygen gasoline-fueled rocket motors exploded in Berlin. Number 1. Henry Winstanley, the Lighthouse. Henry Winstanley designed the first Eddystone lighthouse after his ships faced a deadly threat from the hazardous Eddystone Reef, 14 miles off the Cornwall coast. When his earlier designs were damaged during a storm, he completely redesigned the lighthouse, which rose 80 feet above an improved 24-foot diameter foundation. In addition, he equipped the lighthouse with a fine, luxurious stateroom and proudly told the world that he wished he could be in the lighthouse during the greatest storm that ever was. On the 14th of November, 1698, the first lighthouse became operational. Henry Winstanley climbed up into its lantern and lit 50 tallow candles. Though Winstanley was considered a hero, especially by fishermen, he was unable to enjoy the celebrations for 5 weeks. During 1703, just before Christmas, the weather was so bad that he and his crew were stuck in the lighthouse, by which time they had run out of food and candles. After subsequent terrible winter storms, and the age of the lighthouse being another factor, the lighthouse began crumbling. Winstanley reinforced the walls with stone and rings of iron. In addition, he added another 12 meters to the already existing 20-meter-high tower. Despite a severe gale warning, he insisted on going out to make repairs. This turned out to be his last night. All that is left on the seashore is a few twisted pieces of metal. The Great Storm of Great Britain washed him away and his lighthouse. Later lighthouses were built with wood, and then followed by concrete. Which death did you find the most intriguing? Let us know down in the comments below. Remember to subscribe to Insanity Collection. Also, gently tap the bell icon before it taps you. It's the best way to ensure that you never miss a video from us again. Until next time, stay insane.